Shoobity boop bop. I'm not trying to get copyrighted, but I am trying to show you how I made this halter neck, backless, strapless, everythingless dress. Let's get into this intro. I have this beautiful, very pretty yellow color. So I want to make a halter neck dress. I don't have any zippers, so all of my securing components of the dress are going to be with ties and elastic. I already took measurements of parts of my body to try and figure out how best to cut out the pieces of fabric. I don't have a pattern. I'm just going to cut away and use the power of math to make fashion. All right. I start by cutting out the skirt of the dress since it requires the most fabric. I'm using pins and the measurements I took of my body to map out how I'm going to cut out the top. After cutting it out, I mark my darts on the wrong side of the fabric and mark the placement of my loops that my tie will be strung through. Then duplicate those steps for a lining. I cut out long strips of fabric for my tie and a short strip of fabric for my 4 loops, and a strip that'll serve as casing for my elastic and finish my skirt. So to make my tie, I sew the long strips together, and then I fold that long strip in half, and then fold it in half again, and then sew that together. That makes sense? Y'all, this is not a tutorial. I'm just showing you what I did, okay? And I'm not going to say ask for a tutorial if you want one, because that don't mean I'm going to make one. But yeah, I'm here now putting my preliminary darts in before I do my first fitting. I want it to lay flat on my stomach, right? So making sure this is center. When I pin this flat, you can see that some volume is created here. So I want that volume to lay flat, so I'm going to create a dart by just pinching that excess fabric using a triangle to create that shape that I want. Also, this is pinned inside out, so the dart is sticking out. And I also want to take this extra fabric in right here. So again, I'm gonna pinch it and create a triangle. I'm going to just draw these darts on one side and then mirror them on the other side just so the darts are perfectly even, and then transfer these extra darts onto the other piece that I cut like this. So after adding those additional darts to my shell and lining, I'm ready to tack on my loops and then sew the right sides of my shell and lining together, except for the bottom where I'm going to combine the skirt. I pinned the shell of the top, the skirt, and the casing together before I stitched them down, and then closed the casing while leaving a gap so I can feed the elastic through. Press, 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 press. Grandma said niggas need to press. Everything they do with they dress. Press, 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 press. Gordy. So I was able to feed the elastic through the casing that I made. That elastic, she was a little big back, man. It was hard to get through, but we persevered. And then I fold the top of the top down to create the channel. That didn't make sense, but y'all understand what I'm saying, right? One thing about me, I'm gonna add some frill to my skirts and dresses. So I just cut in a, what's that term called? A spiral. That. Cutting spirals. Cutting, and then I lay out my skirt to see if I have sufficient spirals. Although this is how much I started with, I ended up making like 4 more pieces of spiral just so it hangs like a jellyfish. That's the vibe I was going for. And then I serge all of the edges of my spirals. As you can see, I had a piece to like test. I did the overlocking with yellow and white as my 2 finishing colors. Both very pretty. Loved it. And now I'm just rambling, so I'm gonna stop. So I started pinning on my spirals, but then I wanted to double check in the mirror the asymmetry of the skirt. I wanted it to be more asymmetric, so I did just that, and then I sewed on my spirals. And the last thing I'll mention is that for any of the hanging pieces of spiral, I had to serge both sides of it so neither side would unravel. And it's a beautiful result. Here go the results.